Antoine Semenyo to Manchester City. Here we go. Ruben Amorim sacked by Manchester United. And then we might have some injury issues across Manchester on the blue side of Manchester with Manchester City, with Josko Gvardiol potentially being out for the rest of the season. Diaz could be out for up to 6 weeks. Just an insane start to 2026. We are here for the next hour or so live to preview this week's midweek matches. Let's hit it. Time to go. Hello, everybody, and yes, we are going live again here on Hotsport, trying to, build a little bit more of a momentum in terms of doing some lives and doing some shows, and just kind of talk about all the topics we want to talk about. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribing to the channel, one and all. You guys are all welcome to make sure, if you're in here, join in the chat, the live chat for me on Fire Them Cannons. By the way, hit the QR code to go and subscribe to Fire Them Cannons was on fire. So I want to build something similar here as well on Hotsport. All at one and all. It's now around, I think, around 2 p.m. UK time. So hopefully we can hear some of you guys and what you guys think. But we're going to be doing sort of our regular preview shows as well on this live. We're going to get to Anton's tiers. We're going to hit on a lot of the news, the big topics for me heading into this match week preview. And as well, we will give you our predictions at the end of the show for, all 9 matches, as West Ham and Forest played last night. It was a 2-1 win for Nottingham Forest. But, to be honest, no offense to those clubs. And actually no fans from either clubs. It's a relegation fight. Really, from most of the viewers, the match week really starts today. / tonight. It's 7:30, I believe, UK time. And there are some big ones. Lots of implication. Everybody, actually, 8 matches across the league tonight. So it's going to be a big one. And of course, tomorrow we're going to have that stand-alone clash between Arsenal and Liverpool, which should be special. All right, guys. I was thinking, let's start off with some of the big stories, because I think I want to discuss some of the big stories already. And I think there's only one place to start, because I don't think anybody else is really, everybody's going to think that I'm going to be talking about Amorim to start. And we are going to talk about Amorim, but I've spoken about him a lot. But at the end of the day, we are in the January transfer window. And the biggest transfer in, here we go, Anton's tears needs to be removed from the stage. The biggest transfer, that's been going on in the transfer window, January window, everybody was talking about, was, of course, Antoine Semenyo to Manchester City. Now, a lot has gone on with Man City, and we can cover that stuff as well. They've been linked with Mark Gahey because of the massive injury crisis that they're now having. So that's a big topic on this episode. But let's talk about Antoine Semenyo. Antoine Semenyo is a player that I believe had interest from all the teams in the Premier League. Arsenal, I think we had a bit of an interest, but more for the summer. Chelsea, had massive interest in this one. They pulled out on this. I know Liverpool, if you listen to, many sources said that Liverpool really were targeting Antoine Semenyo in this window. And instead, he decides to go to a team in the title race, to Man City. And if you listen to a lot of the Man City fans who were talking, they're saying that they probably do need a little bit of an extra presence out wide. Like some of their best players, like Shirky and Foden, really operate as tens. I think Doku on the left hand side has been brilliant so far for Man City, but yeah, Savinho is injured at the moment. His performances haven't been great. They haven't really had a great presence out on the right. Now, I believe that Semenyo is a player that probably is more dominant as a left-hand sided player, but I would say that he has operated very many times. I reckon most of his Premier League career actually out on the right-hand side. So he can basically play on either side. He's a very versatile player. He can even come up and pop up in the middle as well. And yeah, look, I think this is a signing that, Terry, who of course, I am with, I know very, very closely, and I'm with him on, the terrace many times, was sort of trying to allude to everybody to say that, hey, look, this could be this Antoine Semenyo. Is this a piece that can get, somebody an edge in this title race? Now, for me, I'll give my opinions quite quickly on this one. I've always kind of felt that I think it's a bit overblown. He had a really, really good, I'd say, first 9 games to the season. When Bournemouth had a really, really good first 9 games to the season. He started out the season as a bang. His stats were through the roof. I do kind of feel like him and the team overall, the last 11 matches now, haven't quite hit the heights that they did in those opening 9. Now, I got to tell you, they gave us a run for our money the other day, but I do kind of still feel that Arsenal were very much in control of that game. But there were spells where Bournemouth really came at Arsenal. But to be honest, did Semenyo really worry me even as the main centerpiece in this team when we played him the other day? Not really. As you can see in the comment here, Hamza, he goes, my guy. I actually wrote, you should see the reply I wrote to him. I go, wait, I'll put it in here. I think I wrote, you can have him. You're still finishing second. But yeah, look, for me, I still think that there's an element of, you can be a big fish in a small pond. And when a lot of these players can look really good at some of these mid-table teams, but then go, step up a level in terms of the quality of the teammates, the competition for places. And at Man City, obviously they're making him a January signing because they plan on using him and they think that he can make a difference this season. So, but at the same time, when he gets onto the training pitch, as we've seen with Eze for Arsenal, for example, is he able to beat out Foden? Is he able to beat out Shirky? Is he able to beat out Doku when Savinho comes back? Bernardo Silva is in there. There are a lot of different options that Man City do have that they can go to in that attack. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this one goes. Like, again, I do feel like it's been a big week for them in this title race. For Arsenal, but I think more specifically for them. So let's actually get into some of like the headlines. I think we're going to start with Man City as a big thing, and of course, then we're going to move to their neighbors. Here you go. Pep says ordinary signs. We'll see the transfer market and we'll be creative. And then, of course, a few hours later, the here we go gets dropped. But yes, another target for Manchester City has been Mark Guéhi. Now, I think Mark Guéhi also has been a target for Liverpool. Remember, famously, he almost went there on deadline day. They pulled the plug the last second because Igor Julio ended up at West Ham instead of a Crystal Palace. So they weren't able to get that replacement in. His contract runs out at the end of the season. Now, at the end of the year, apparently, he's going to have many suitors. Arsenal are big admirers of Guéhi and have been for years. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal will also come in for Guéhi. Let's say that City come in for Guéhi, because we've had our own issues staying healthy. I think for me, I've figured out that I figured out. I knew it to begin with, but people started to figure out that Nkapie is probably more of a left back than he is a center back. And Miles Lewis-Skelly has struggled for form the whole season. So for me, after having seen what happened in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals, we didn't celebrate the goal. I think there was something in it, maybe. And wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal go after Gahey, because at the same time, does Andrea Berta just sit back and allow City to go ahead and get the players they need? But at the same time, the player might be really tempted because of the fact that Guardiola's not going to be there. So there is a vacancy to begin with that will be there from now to the end of the season, right? Diaz will be out for 6 weeks, and he gets to play with John Stones, I think, which would be, a partnership that he's used to because that's his international teammate. That's the center back partnership for England. So it could be very appealing. At the same time, though, to commit yourself to one club now, and instead maybe waiting, having your options of clubs in the summer might be a move for Gahey. It's going to be interesting. I think from what Fabrizio says, Gahey is very much a target for City. City is definitely very much going to pursue him. That's an area of need. So from the point of view of City's going to go after the deal, I think there's no doubt. Now, does Gahey reciprocate that interest is something that I think has yet to be reported and yet to be seen. And of course, we have the big here we go, as we mentioned at the top of the show for him. But look, big questions now. We'll talk about it, of course, more when we hit. Look, there's so much. There's so much news, as you can see on the timeline, of course, with Man United. This is the big one, right? Here we go. Ruben Diaz will be out for 6 weeks with a hamstring injury. Man City confirmed. Follows the tibial fracture to the right leg of Josko Gvardiol, another injury for City. So I think we can talk about the implications of the title race wide, considering what's happened in some of these games. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about them, but I think that's kind of what Anton's Tears is about. Really, it's more of the recap of the previous one. So when we get into Anton's Tears, I think we'll discuss these things further at length in terms of how it played out on the pitch and the implications of the title race. But from a Man City point of view, and to lose your best two center backs this part of the season is a big deal. Now, Arsenal went through this phase sort of in November, December, basically all of November, December without Gabriel. And then there were many, many times, we head into Stamford Bridge and Saliba all of a sudden is not available. Saliba doesn't play against Villa. He doesn't play against Brentford. He doesn't play another game that I think he didn't play as well, but I think we still kind of got away with it. I'm going back we were going all the way back to Matchweek 14. That was Matchweek 13. That was the Chelsea game, right? Didn't play against Brentford, didn't play against Villa, and I was sure he didn't play against Villa, and then he did not. And was he back for Wolves? I don't think he was. Was he back? Yeah, I think he was. He was. Yeah, he was back for. All right. But in the period of time where Arsenal didn't have either of those players, Arsenal had their share of injuries this year. So had Man City, by the way. But this one is big because they've been struggling keeping teams out anyway. They've been pretty vulnerable, especially on the counterattack this season. And so to lose both of these two players, I don't even know, by the way, if Gahey alone is gonna plug that gap. I do think that there's an element to Gahey only being one player. And by the way, coming in from another club, I don't know if he's necessarily bridges that gap. The interesting thing for me is that I think people were talking about, as we started building up to the training window, you have to take into account that City are probably going to get Semenyo and they're probably going to get Gahey. But the more that this thing has played out, the less I feel like that is really going to make an implication on the title race. Like it's really going to shift things. I do believe that if everybody was healthy and if Guardiola, to be honest, if like they were targeting before Guardiola and Diaz, for me that the deal didn't make sense, especially for Gahey at all, because like what, we're moving in January to be a backup. What are we doing here? Right. But had those injuries not occurred, or only if one of them was hurt, right? So let's say it's just but for me, even if it was just Vardiol, right? I think we'd all agree that Vardiol is probably a better defender overall than Mark Gahey. So it's still, you know, you're not making up for the Vardiol. It's what like for like, but it doesn't really give them an edge. Doesn't put them over the top of Arsenal in terms of squad strength overall. But now you got to bridge the 6-point gap as well. And yeah, I think this is a team that knows that's been scoring the most of anybody in the league. I don't know if attack was ever really their issue. They've always had abundant, rich amounts of options in attack. I don't know if it changes the title race, but it's interesting, guys. Semenyo, very, very much sought after, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Does Semenyo change anything, you know, in this race? But now I think it's time to talk about the big headline, like the big breaking news that's been, you know, talked about everywhere. And I've discussed this at length, but I want to play this because now we're here on my show. I don't know how much of this we will go through. It's 6 minutes 13, this clip. But I want to get to the main parts. This was basically the quotes that Ruben Amorim made that I think eventually led to him being dismissed by Man United. That really broke the straw that really broke the camel's back.
I think we did well. We improved a lot of things that compared to the last game. We controlled quite well the aggressivity of the offensive from Leeds. We controlled well 1-against-1. A really good environment, a really fun environment, and they did well. We controlled more the possession, the connection, the position of the players. I think they were in the better positions to play, and that can show in the way we played. We had more chances than the opponent to score, but we need to now to think about the next one.
In terms of Josh Wazowski and the assist goal, how important is that for both of them, especially with the creative players you have out?
It's really important. I think Ben improved in the connection today. Josh, the 20 minutes that he played, he was active. He was creating chances, creating spaces for us. So it's important. Also, Manu played better today and helped the team also to create chances. Was better than last week.
You made a big decision in the summer when Rasmus went away to bring Benjamin in. His goals are not there. Could you just explain what he's bringing to the team? Because chances.
First of all, to miss the chances that he's missing is always there. And that is the first step. He's really aggressive when the ball goes to the side.
Right. I don't think we're getting to the main point here.
To fight for the first ball.
Okay, I want to get to the... Here we go. Let's talk about this. Let's look at this. Our voice or something.
In difficult moments this season, you're always very upbeat. Obviously, just on Friday, you look pretty downbeat. Obviously, talking about transfers and systems. Can I just ask you? Is nothing's changed? You still feel very much that confidence from the board and everything.
Guys, to stop with that, and I noticed that you receive selective information about everything. I came here to be the manager of Manchester United, not to be the coach of Manchester United. And that is clear. I know that my name is not Tuchel, it's not Conte, it's not Mourinho, but I'm the manager of Manchester United. And it's going to be like this for 18 months or when the board decided to change. So that was my point. I want to finish with that. I'm not going to quit. I will do my job until other guy is coming here to replace me.
Yeah, that is scathing. that was a cry. That was a cry for a way out of here. He even spoke about at the end here, you know, until somebody's there to come and replace me. He's basically saying, guys, get me the fuck out of here. That's basically what I kind of felt like. And that's there's so many things to talk about on the story of Ruben. And of course, we've had him on the Under Pressure. We've talked. It's funny, like talk about a lot of the managers that we discussed on the Under Pressure. Maresca has been on there. He's gone. Now Ruben, this is a big one. Ruben, he's gone. You know, I think a lot of these guys eventually are going. Nuno might be on his way out twice. Ange's already been out. You know, like it's been an insane season of managerial pressure, and it's all come to sort of a bit of a crescendo here at the start of 2026. So we had Maresca, of course, going out. By the way, the appointment of Liam Rossigna has been here we go by Fab as well. But let's talk about Ruben. So for me, I thought at the start of Ruben Amorim that I always thought he was a good manager, right? I knew that Liverpool were interested in him at one point before they hired Slot. I know there was a point in time where he almost went to West Ham, I believe, when Moyes left, or to replace Lopetegui, or sometime around then, right? He was close to becoming West Ham manager, if I recall. I always kind of thought he was a good manager. But let's go back beyond before that, because when Ten Hag was sacked, there was a debate amongst the Manchester United hierarchy as to who they want to appoint. And Dan Ashworth wanted to appoint Gareth Southgate. Everybody else was already a big fan of Ruben Amorim, and the rest of the Ineos board or whatever were all kind of sold on this Ruben Amorim idea. And Dan Ashworth said, you know what, I think that Southgate is going to be a better fit for what we need right now. And by the way, Dan Ashworth was hired to be the main decision maker by Ineos, and he had a suggestion. They didn't like the suggestion, and they fired him. For me, the problems at Man United, and again, have been existing before there was Ineos, with the Glazers, of course, and have really existed pretty much since Sir Alex Ferguson. And I feel like as time has gone on, they've gone unaddressed. They've beat around the bush. They've never really, done anything super drastic to try to reset the culture. And I do think that there's a toxic culture in general at Man United. Now, when Ruben came in, I thought, you know what, damn, watch out. It's, Man United are probably going to be good now. They're going to be well coached. We played Ruben in the Europa League. This was the year 2023, and he knocked us out. They knocked us out of the Europa League was it the quarterfinal stages or the last 16 stages? But I thought it was a good appointment for Manchester United. I mean, look at the way Victor Gyökeres was playing under Ruben Amorim. I thought he was one of the brighter up-and-coming managers, and, Man United got themselves a trick. And, the discussion was, hey, maybe they're going to go ahead and they're going to go after Victor Gyökeres now. Obviously he didn't end up there. He ended up at the Arsenal. But I felt like last year, and I think Man United are doing the right thing, by the way. The news has been coming out that Solskjaer potentially could be on his way back as the caretaker manager, by the way, but we'll get to that. But I think that this year, the way they're doing it is what they should have done about a year ago. I thought that he always kind of was on the back foot in that first season. And he said, things are going to have to get worse before things get better. And for me, I just felt like, you know what, guys, just stay off of his back. But then came that Europa League run. And by the way, I think they excused the league form because as long as they won in the Europa League, they would end up in the Champions League, right? And I think most Man United fans accepted that. I don't think that the league form last season really comes into play whatsoever. But yeah, they lose to Spurs in the final. By the way, that kind of changes some of the targets that they could have gone after, if they had Champions League football. And a lot of people wanted him gone at that point, right? But then they went ahead, and they backed him in the summer. They got themselves Cunha, they got themselves Mbumo, they got themselves Sesko, they got themselves Le Mans, the goalkeeper. And that was sort of, after Onana and Bayindir have had their issues, and they felt like, we need to really, really address the keeper situation. And I think, to be fair, I think Le Mans has been a hit. I think Mbumo is going to been a hit. I think as the season has gone on, Cunha has been a hit. The one that a lot of people question, and my friend David, who you guys have all seen on the Football Terrace, and he's been on this channel before as well, saying like he doesn't believe that Sesko was really Ruben Amorim's player that he really, really wanted. It was more that Barada and Wilcox acted alone in that, and then they wanted to get Sesko because they missed out on Gyökeres, and they felt that whatever was left. I think Amorim wanted Gyökeres. When Arsenal got Gyökeres, they're like, well, the fruit has now dropped from the tree. Let's go get Sesko. And I don't know if necessarily Ruben was as big of a fan of Sesko. And evidence points to that with the amount of times that he started Mason Mount up front, which I always kind of felt was odd. But we're beating around the bush. 38% win percentage has been for Ruben Amorim this year. I mean, not this year, in his Man United career. That's poor. 14 wins in 14 months is what David said. That's insane. That is just awful. The not willing to change from a back three, and especially in certain games where the Everton game was one of note, where they actually go up by a man, Everton get a man sent off, and they're 1-0 down, they got to chase the game, and nothing. In the game against, was it Wolves or West Ham? It was, they were chasing the game, and, his attacking substitution was a center back off for a center back on. A lot of that stuff, a lot of people were starting to really, really be concerned. Interestingly enough, though, I kind of felt personally that, they had some really good results, and they were actually starting to look better. They were looking more consistent. They're 3 points. He left them 3 points off of Champions League, right? But at the end of the day, I do feel that there was something really never felt right from the start. So many times, I think that he got emotional. He was saying things like, "Oh, if I'm not here tomorrow, I might quit, whatever, all this stuff." And the other times, he'd be like, "No, I'm never going anywhere," or "I wouldn't change my formation for the Pope." It was always very, very emotional. And from apparently, the conversation that he had with Wilcox, where he goes, "Hey, man, I'm a big supporter of yours, but what's going on with this formation, dude?" And apparently, he got very, very touchy, and he just went like it seems as if he wasn't willing to take criticism. Look, Man United have got their problems, and Man United are going to continue to have their problems. Does Solskjaer and Fletcher fix anything, or Carrick? Probably not. I mean, I still think that this is a team that, Bruno's out, and Mbumo's going to come back. Cunha's already hitting great form. Ahmad's on fantastic form on the African Cup of Nations. I do think that this is this world where United actually qualify for the Champions League, which will be interesting in terms of, their fan base can also get caught up in the moment. And, if Solskjaer is back, and like, all these, probably the best of all the managers we had since Fergie left, why not keep him? Whatever. Let's not make this like. I know kind of the way that they will talk, because they think that the solutions to their problems are so simple. But for me, I think they need to take 6 months and they will be able to kind of evaluate everything, look through all the potential candidates. I think they're going to have to clean house in terms of play. I'm talking about even further. I know that, I think most of these guys are kind of on loan though, like the Rashfords. Was Anthony sold or was he loaned? Sancho was loaned. So like they've had kind of cleaned house, but not completely. They need to get rid of Maguire's. They need to get rid of Shaw's. They need to get rid of Dallo's. They need to get rid of Malacia's. They've got a bunch of players that have been brought in by a bunch of different managers. And a bunch of those guys are kind of taking up parts in the wage bill. The culture isn't necessarily right. And you're going to have to just, blow up the playing squad a little bit. Maybe you can recoup some money. Otherwise, you're just going to have to cut bait for me, in my opinion. And whoever this new manager is, it needs to be a blank, clean slate. They need to be able to start from point zero and work their way up and be patient and stop with the, we're Man United, we're supposed to be going for the title bullshit. And just be like, hey, let's just enjoy the football. Let's see how the football is being played. Let's get behind the team. Let's, get invested in the project. Let's get invested in the process. And, you build your squad bit by bit. You create a nice young core. You build your core. You start with your cornerstones. Let's say it's a Kobe Mainu. Let's say it's Lenny Yoro, who I think could be a massive cornerstone for them. Benjamin Sesko, you look at the age on Benjamin Sesko, could be a cornerstone piece for them. They can Dorgu could be a cornerstone piece for them. You start with that. Maybe I think you sell Bruno, to be honest, and you recoup money from as much as you can on that as well. Guys like Casemiro should be probably leaving the football club, and you got to kind of start young. You got your Heavens as well. Those type of players, and you have to realize that not everything is going to be solved in one transfer window. It's going to take different windows. Some of the signings aren't going to work, but you're going to have to start building an identity, a culture, having players buy in to what the manager is doing, really love the manager, really love each other, support each other, and that's the type of culture that you need to be emulating, because at the moment, something seems off. Like if Ineos really are wanting to be successful in this, because I think this is their last shot. I mean, to be honest, who's firing them? They have a stake in the ownership. But in terms of, I think, having the confidence or any belief from the Man United support, this is really their last shot. And this is the big one. For me, I think Ruben was always kind of like their big guy. As I said, they got rid of Ashworth so that, they could get their guy, because Ashworth wanted Southgate. For me, I would relent and I would get Southgate. I already made that opinion, and a lot of people disagree. David, when I was talking to him yesterday, was saying, he would like to go see them go after Enrique, which is a good way. I think that's also a good way to do it. But again, get yourself a big name manager, Enrique. But a lot of times when you do that, especially if you're Man United, you're going, look, Enrique won the Champions League with PSG. We can win the Champions League this year, or we can challenge for the league this year. And even if you got an Enrique, you need to realize, no, we're going to build this squad in the image of how he wants us to play, but we're starting from zero. It's sort of like, when you play, you say this, but you play on FIFA or whatever they call it, EAFC, right? Career mode, right? Sometimes you're going to pick a club that, start from the bottom. You kind of build, sign a bunch of young players, watch them kind of grow together as you see the improvements, and then you start, to get better and better and better. And I think that's kind of what they need to do. I think it could be a fun project. To be honest, you kind of going to change the mentality about it, but it needs to realize that it's a project. It's not a quick fix. That is kind of the key for me. If they're really going to go back to their glory days, it needs to be a project. We're starting from the bottom. We're going to, maybe get some upcoming players, have some sort of a strategy, but make sure it all meshes together. It fits, and give it time and give it patience. But yeah, Would I have sacked Ruben Amorim now? Probably not. But after having seen this press conference, I think they had no other choice. I think they were going to keep him at least to the end of the season, see where the results were going to be at. I think for the most part, I think they were going to get rid of him. But now I think right now, maybe it's a good project, a good practice in lowering your expectations. Maybe having Fletcher in there or whatever, Solskjaer or Carrick, but however, it may turn out to be, could be a good thing for Man United in terms of teaching the fan base a sort of mindset of like, all right, we're starting from scratch here. We're not going to expect anything, let's play some good football. Let's see a belief. Let's see everybody play for each other. Let's see them play, really bring the intensity, bring the hard work, fight on the pitch, fight for each other. That's kind of like the basics. And then you start to build. Then you start bringing your new manager. Then you got to really, really buy into that new manager as a long-term project. I don't want to be hearing next season about whoever I'll put a name out. Who's De Zerbi in, De Zerbi out, whatever. Let's say it's De Zerbi, right? No De Zerbi ins, De Zerbi outs, right? I think that is the problem. I think with a lot of football fans, is that it's always like we're gonna be in or out sort of scape. Take that away. Just forget about it. You just got to realize that it's a project. Now, as the times goes on, if you don't see any sort of little kind of bits of progress, let's say the football sucks, let's say you're losing a lot of games, maybe that again, context comes into play with everything. But yeah, let's see what's going to be going on with Man United moving forward. It's going to be really, really interesting. And yeah, I think those are sort of kind of the big headlines for this week. And we're about 37 minutes into our live, so it's time. I think we're going to start with. We'll start with wait. Guys, now that we're having people more pipping the live button, guys, leave some comments for me in the comment section or in the chat, guys, if you are here. But we are going to get to our main event, and that is Anton's Tears, guys. So let us begin. Wait, I need to get my music going. All right. As a fan of the Arsenal, rivals are dropping points left, right, and center. It has been a banger of a start to 2026. Man City have dropped points not just once, but twice now, and Arsenal have opened the gap to 6 points. Let us see how all 20 teams now fit on this week's edition of Anton's Tears. I'm going to actually remove Ruben from the stage. It's this week's edition of Anton's Tears, guys. So if you guys don't know, this is actually the 21st installment of Anton's Tears. And we've been doing this since the start of the week. Every single week, we're kind of giving you how I feel all the teams are tiered up based on their performances this year, based on how I think that the season can go moving forward, the difficulty of schedule, the strength and the squad, everything. All different things have been taken into account. I've got a committee. We look after, we vote every single week. We discuss everything. And we kind of come up with a consensus of how we like to have these tiers. This is the Match Week 21 tiers. Now, as you see, Wolves have been eliminated for the tiers. But before, we move on past Wolves, because we usually don't, spend much time talking about Wolves. Congratulations to them. 20 weeks it took, 20 games it took them and they finally registered their first win. Still, I think they're almost a guarantee to get relegated. I would be shocked if at one point I removed them from the elimination tier. At the moment, they are definitely still, regardless of the win, and by the way, congratulations, but they are on the elimination tier. Let's start from the bottom row. Let's go. I've been waiting on this name for a long time. Claret and Blues. That's right. These two teams, Burnley and West Ham, are in dire straits. They are, after Wolves, because we've kind of already knocked them out, these are the teams that are seriously in trouble. Looking at the table right now, especially, by the way, after last night, after Forest came back from behind to beat West Ham, Nuno could be sacked already as I'm on this live. I don't know. But now it's a 7-point hole that West Ham see themselves sitting in. And for Burnley, it's even worse. It's a 9-point hole. So when I talk about the Premier League title race and saying that Arsenal are 6 points ahead of City, and you hear the things that I've said about that, in recent shows, a 9-point gap for Burnley is really, really, really worrying. And a 7-point gap for West Ham is just as bad. Like, I'm almost ready to eliminate these teams. Like, this relegation fight might not have much suspense at all. I feel like, and it's a shame for West Ham because I think they're way too good, too talented. They've actually added two new strikers to the mix this last week. I believe Tati is the name of the main guy, and the other one is I was doing him earlier, but Castellanos that's the Castellanos. That's Tati, right? Tati Castellanos. That's the striker. They brought in two, but still, by the way, Tati, I believe, played yesterday. But yeah, what about crazy? If Nuno gets sacked, by the way, having lost to Forest, I feel bad for him a little bit because Marinakis got him the hell out of Forest, and they had a falling out. And if Forest were the one that defeated West Ham so that he would go out at West Ham, I think is insane. Now, for me, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't think Nuno Espirito Santo's sacking is going to save West Ham. I actually think they have a better shot in staying up if they stick by him. Because what are you going to do? You're going to change the manager again? New manager bounce can only take you so far. I think more you have a guy who's been there and done that in this league. He had Forest nearly in the Champions League last year. Was a win away from the Champions League last year. He's a good manager. He did not deserve 2 sackings in a season. I think it's insane. I think Nottingham Forest season looks completely different had they not sacked him to begin with. They started off pretty well. The sacking comes out of nowhere. That tanked their season. West Ham, most of their problems already were happening prior to that with Graham Potter. I think it's just, I think if Sullivan really cuts the cord, and it seems like he's going to, under Espirito Santo, it's another example of a really poorly run club. And with Burnley, I think it's just a sense of like they really fought for a while. There are some really good games, and even recently they come back and they've gotten some good points. Like Brighton, they just lost to Brighton in that game. I don't think Brighton absolutely destroyed them. Ran away with them unnecessarily. I don't think they're really getting pumped by teams in general. But I just think they just don't have the talent. I think they're the worst squad in terms of talent. Even I think they talent-wise, they're even a weaker squad than Wolves. I think that's just the end of the day that they're undoing. They always were going to have an uphill battle to climb. But unfortunately, these two teams seems like the most likely to go down. Next up, speed bumps. Now, I would say overall this season, especially for Forest, the form has not been good. But when it comes to them slowing other teams down and not allowing them to sort of play the game that they want to and kind of bring them down to their level, they've been really good at that this year. Like, I know they lost to City, but Shirky took a really wonder goal from him to really do the damage there. And you saw what they did at Anfield. You saw what they've done against Spurs. good performance over the night against West Ham. I think that was I think that was the biggest, most important game of their season because it really, really gave them daylight to put them 7 clear of the relegation zone. So yeah, Dyche has settled the ship, and they become a pain in the ass in certain things, and that's sort of what Sean Dyche does. That's exactly what he does. He will take time, and even when he's got other fixtures, to play between, when he's got a big challenge coming up, he will do a lot of research and he'll do a lot of studying. He'll have a game plan ready to be weeks in advance, and it's always going to be a speed bump. And what was a speed bump for Liverpool the other day? It was Fulham. I mean, what a game that was. That was insane. Just to see some of the reactions, some of the watch-alongs. Liverpool fans thought they had won it in injury time, when Gakpo scored. And it was a prayer 2 minutes later or so from Harrison Reed. I reckon it's the goal of the season. There have been so many candidates, but this one, given, the implications in the game, the timing of the game, it was the last kick of the game and the flying of the top corner. They've given teams major headache. You saw what they did to Tottenham. You saw what they did. I mean, to be what? 5-0 down against or 5-1 down against Man City, and for it to come back to 5-4. Again, they are a speed bump. Neither of these teams are going to really ever put together consistency to push the top part of the league from this point on, I don't think. But they're going to be a tough out for anybody. And this is, I think what's something that's been illustrated for me this week is that the Premier League is hard, man. Even Fulham and Forest, who are sitting this far down in the league, or in my tiers, are still, you don't look at them and go, hey, that's an automatic win. Like, Arsenal's got to go to Forest, I believe, not this week, because we got the FA Cup, but the weekend following. And for me, I want to rest my players, certain players in these 2 cup games coming up, to make sure that we're ready to take care of business against Forest at their ground. Like, that's not going to be an easy one for us, and that's kind of the team they are. But let's move on up. Not bad, but not amazing. Let's give props to Leeds. The good results keep on coming. They go behind to Man United. Oh no, wait, did they go behind or they went in front? Sorry, they go in front against Man United, and everyone's thinking, oh, here you go again. It was Aronson who scored. Cunha gets them one back, but that's another picked up points at Ellen Road. It continues with a very impressive run of results. The week prior to that, it was a draw against Liverpool. So now you got draws back to back with Liverpool and United. The week prior to that, a draw at Stadium Light against Sunderland. The week prior to that, a demolishing of Crystal Palace at home. Before that, they went to the G-Tech, a tough place to go, got a point. Like, this has been a really good run. Now we're back to Matchweek 15. This is 6 weeks. Draw at home against Liverpool. Then, of course, you have the 3-1 against Chelsea. They have been, for the third of the season now, this most recent third of the season, they have been putting together the consistency of a top half side. Now, the first 14 games were a bit shoddy. They had some good ones in there, but they also had some other pretty bad ones in there. I don't expect this form to continue throughout the whole season. They're going to have some tough ones coming up. By the way, I didn't even mention when they, fought back against City from 2-0 down to make it 2-2. And then you got Everton, who I think are been better than I thought. Now, last week, I've actually got to credit them. I know they lost 4-2 to Brentford, but they just kept on coming. We got to applaud that. Before that, they went away to Forest and got a win, right? But I think this has been way too inconsistent. They've been I don't know what to expect sometimes on this Everton side. But again, there have also been some really, really good performances in there as well, and some really bad ones. So it's not been amazing, but I think overall Everton have done better than I expected them this year. I think this has been one of their better years. I think Grealish has been important, but also got to remember that in Jai, who's been probably the best attacker, is out of AFCON. They're also missing Idrissa Gana Gueye, but I think that Everton are going to be all right. I think they're going to be all right. Anyway, let's go move on to the next one. This one's sort of a box of chocolates, and yeah, Tottenham are the fourth from bottom tier, and all of these I can't really put together something that is like in common with all these teams. So Bournemouth is a team that started off gangbusters to start the year, and now are 11 games without victory. So they've slipped. Crystal Palace, will be mentioned, have slipped. Again, another defeat away at Selhurst Park. Sorry, away at St James's Park for them. That's kind of what it's kind of looked like. Tottenham under Thomas Frank have been a bit of a mess. They've had some good results here and there. And Brighton, again, a team that at certain times is going to have some great games and on certain times not so great games. But I'll give credit to Brighton. They passed the you must beat Burnley test. You can't say the same for Bournemouth. When I say, let's stop the rot. They finally got their first win since the month of November. That was big. But again, all these teams were teams that, at some point were pushing the, maybe that's what they have in common. Pushing the top of the, had a pretty decent start to the season. Looked solid to start the season and have kind of really faded away. All four of these. Maybe Box of Chocolates wasn't the right name for it. To be honest, I put this together list pretty late on in the day, like the names of these tiers. I would maybe change it to I'm fading. All right, yeah. That's kind of where it's been. They've kind of been fading away from what they were at the start of the season, all of these teams. And I think this is kind of actually pretty, given the form, generous for me to have these teams at this point of the tiers. Moving on up, the Northern Neighbours, that's right. Tyne Weir Derby, the brothers, Newcastle and Sunderland. And they're starting to move closer and closer as the weeks move on to the table. It's like each other in the table. What's the difference now between Newcastle and Sunderland now? Now it's a 1 point gap where Sunderland are up ahead of Newcastle by a point. So what are these? So Sunderland have to go away to Brentford. Newcastle got Leeds at home. There is a real possibility that Newcastle might sneak ahead of Sunderland this week. There's a real possibility, but this is what I'm going to say about these two teams. Both of them have really been very reliable for me when I can count on them. When my rivals go to their ground, I'm like, no, this is going to be an upset. This is going to be a tough one. Like, both of them took points off of Manchester City. Like, what 5 points in total? I think they took off Man City, these two sides. And both of them have this real toughness. They're real crazy crowds. They've got this sort of northern DNA. And I think Sunderland have got the points in the bank. They, for me, are a top half side. Newcastle, for me, are always meant to be a top half side. And yeah, it's very interesting. I like, it was a 1-0 win to Sunderland at the time. They're going to get the reverse fixture later on in the year. That's St James's Park. I think it's very nice to see these two rivals kind of almost mirror each other's form. I would say they kind of like swap places, and now it's starting to come to the medium, and you've had a very similar sorts of seasons. I feel like Sunderland's looked a little bit more impressive overall, but now it's only a 1 point gap. And Newcastle are creeping in there. They're doing their business. And I think there's a chance that Newcastle might slip past their neighbours in the next day or so by the end of the day. Let's see. Next up, buzz off. So buzz off to Ruben Amorim. But guys, Brentford, we gotta talk. That was fucking amazing. Another hat trick for Igor Thiago. Another amazing game. And this time, I believe, you know, I've always kind of given them credit for being a great home team. But to do that at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, that's a whole other level, my friends. That is talking. We are now into the second half of the season, and Brentford are still cooking. I think this is not going away. Amazing. This is like I think the shock team of the year, the overachievers. And in the meantime, Man United. I know these two teams, like when I can't find similarities. You know, Man United got one more point than Brentford, but Man United just sucked the manager. Well, oh, sorry. It is actually 2:00 in the morning here in Australia, where I gotta film this and get to bed. We'll do this and then we're gonna do our predictions. But yeah, they're here for two different reasons. I feel like Brentford, I underestimated the playing squad, but the manager has done a really, really good job. Keith Andrews, you know, everyone thought, you know, Thomas Frank was on his way out. Everyone kind of thought, okay, well, this is a team that's going down. I predicted them to get relegated this season. And Keith Andrews did an amazing job. They're so, like, they found different ways to kind of win than they were under Thomas Frank to become an amazing set piece team. Incredible. Man United the other way around. I actually think I liked a lot of the players that Man United brought in. I actually thought, you know, good recruitment in the summer. But the managerial performance has been bad. In fact, so bad, he's out of there. And that's what I'm saying, buzz off. The Brentford Bees are buzzing, and Amorim has buzzed off. And yeah, that's the level. For everyone who guys wants to kind of give you a perspective, I don't think Man United have been that bad, and I've been an advocate for saying they haven't been that bad. As I was saying, I know I just said, you know, what I just said about Ruben, but that was sort of just kind of out of the, you know, part of being, you know, the pun, fitting in with the pun. Sorry, it's literally late. I'm literally like having to dig the dictionary down the back of my head right now. So, but yeah, that's kind of it's just say how amazing Brentford have been, but also kind of look, Man United, by the way, improved. It's gonna be interesting to see now, though, if Ollie's at the wheel, what Man United are going to look like. It's going to be interesting to see what Man United look like today. Anyway, moving up. As the world turns, these two have been some of my favorite soap operas. I mean, we had another soap opera at Man United, from one to Chelsea and Liverpool. Liverpool, we all know the story. We saw the week-to-week soap opera. We got a little bit of a break from it. They found some little consistency. But boy, was that fun what happened with Fulham. Oh, I gotta show you some of this. Some of the live, the watch along stuff when they were celebrating. You know, there was a sex of the Liverpool fan base who really believed that they were still in this title race. I wonder if they believe it. And you know, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so, and being like, what the fuck? What a strike again. Just absolutely amazing. What a moment, seriously. And then Chelsea. Dan, by the way, gotta give the games for both of these teams were dramatic. Gotta give them credit for sticking in there. I thought they were actually made City. I thought there was actually a pretty low-key, good effort, good performance. A team without a manager. Now, did they miss a lot of good chances? Yes, and I think that they could have. Neto missed a sitter. I thought, you know, a lot of the attacking players for them really didn't play that well, but they hung in there. They had a moment where Gusto put the ball ahead and Enzo put it away in the back of the net. Thank you very much. But it does not take away from the fact that there has been drama, that they've sacked Maresca, that Liam Rosina is now going to be the new manager, that they had, is it Kenneth McFarland was the guy who was in there? I've been calling him Dan Potts all week, but it's actually, I think, Kenneth McFarland. Never managed first team football in his life at a professional level and managed to get a draw with Pep Guardiola. Ah, well done. Just between these two teams, the other day provided such an entertaining 4 hours. It's the drama on the pitch, the drama off the pitch. He's still got all these slot outers, even though he won a title. And Maresca's already out. I wonder what's going to be on this week's installment of As the Chelsea and Liverpool Turn. As the football turns. I don't know what we'll come up with a name for that. Next up, round of applause. It was a really good effort, Aston Villa at Man City. I gotta say, you had me there for a bit. You had me humbled there for a bit. Especially City. You know, they were breathing down the necks for a little bit. Well done. Well done for, you know, I at one point was asking, I was sitting here crying out for a challenger, just for some entertainment. And these two teams stepped up to the plate and they did it. And to just give you context, Villa to win 11 straight games in all comps. I believe it was about 7 or 8 in the Premier League. City had about a 6 or 7 game winning run as well. And look, both of them have gotten humbled in certain ways. City, you know, the way they dropped to Sunderland, the way they lost to Chelsea, now they're going to have the massive injury issues. The season has changed for City, I believe. I'm really interested to see what happens from this point forward. This is going to be a massive test for Pep because they've also got the Carabao Cup coming along, and they've got, you know, a tough game in the Champions League coming along. How are they going to manage through the injuries? It's going to be really interesting, just beyond the title race, for where this City season goes. You know, Semenyo is going to come in. I think he's going to play against Spurs, though, for Bournemouth one more time before he joins, because he hasn't been officially signed. He's got his medical to come, I believe, on the day after the game, on the Thursday, as everyone's been saying. So you're going to have that part, potentially, if they're going to go after Gahey, as we've mentioned at the opening part of this show. Let's see. And for Villa, again, they got humbled by Arsenal a couple weeks ago. Good response by beating Forest. Again, like, you got Forest, you know, look at those back and forth results, right? But good response by Villa. Look, at the moment, given the injury issues with the City, question if we'll move on to the next part of the tier. Are Villa the main contenders for Arsenal now? Are they more well positioned? I mean, we'll have to see. Because at the moment, the momentum is swinging in the direction of the inevitables. This is a name that I've come up with, and I've thought about it because, you know, the last Arsenal title winners went 49 games undefeated. We called them the Invincibles, and the story, I believe, of this year's Arsenal, I call them the Inevitables. Everyone has been afraid of what it's going to be like if Arsenal won the league. Everyone has been so desperate to see Arsenal bottle it again. Everyone is ignoring the process that Arteta has put together to get you into this position. How he's taken Arsenal from a team in the mud, mediocre, we were the butt of everybody's jokes, the banter club. How he's taken that to a team that is so dominant, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that is so consistent, that is so professional, and is so deep. Best squad in the league. as I'm saying, I call them the inevitables because everyone knows it's coming. It's just taking a long time for everybody to kind of come to grips with what's going on. And this week, I think, was a pivotal week. All the rivals dropped points. You had 2 managerial sackings, one of which was Chelsea, who at one point, remember, were a challenger. Self-proclaimed, I bought into it for about the span of 48 hours or so. City dropping the points twice. But this one is a big one for me. If Arsenal can take care of Liverpool, and let's say you even do it in a convincing fashion, you're dashing the hopes of Liverpool completely, I believe. Any slight little, pipe dream that's been going on in some Liverpool fans' minds might get completely shattered at the Emirates. But I think it's one of these games where Arsenal need to go ahead and really take it to Liverpool and really, really, really send a message one more time to the league where it's like, nah, this Arsenal, look, make an example out of them. Now let's see what happens with Man City against Brighton. For me, I think it's irrelevant to the conversation this week. I think 6 points is more than comfortable enough for Arsenal to kind of be able to maneuver. It's time to start thinking about really starting to click into gear and play some really good ball. I think we've already shown that with a Villa game. I think this could be something that's similar. You had a different type of champion performance against Bournemouth. Rice, great individual performance, scoring 2 very, very similar goals, box crashing. And yeah, I think it's time to get Victor Gyökeres more involved as well. Again, I feel like, and I think that talk has died down a little bit because I think people are starting to understand that Arsenal's just winning. And it's more about winning rather than talking about, let's find one thing to criticize. And people talking about Eze not playing or not, that just shows you how good Arsenal is. 11 games in a row that Villa put together. I think 8 or 7 wins in a row, similar for Man City. All for them to both still be 6 points behind the league leaders, the inevitables. I am feeling more confident than ever. It's funny how the goalposts always move. People say, wait until January. See where we're at in January after the festive period. Festive period is over, guys. The smoke is cleared and Arsenal 6 points clear at the top of the league. So what's one point more clear than it was pre-Villa away at the start of December. So Arsenal's increased. So let's see. This is again, it's not over yet. Man City are going to try to find their answers in the window. But Man City are injured. Arsenal are in form. Momentum is swinging in Arsenal's direction. Do not, under any circumstances, give them life. This is a big week. Just like the last week was a big week, this next one's a big week. If Arsenal somehow are able to push the gap to 8 or 9 points this weekend, or during this week, before we're going to play 2 cup games, I think that really puts Arsenal in the massive driver's seat. Where then, new Champions League games start to come back into play, and you're going to be able to have a little bit more flexibility. I think it's time for Arsenal to be assertive and put this title away. This is kind of, for me, what Arteta needs to do to separate himself from seasons past. To not fuck around anymore and really, really, really hammer it home. That's the time right now. That's what Arsenal need to be focused on. It's just focusing on ourselves. We no longer have a rival to worry about their results, really. I mean, they're 6 points behind the 2 of them. As long as we're not dropping points in the immediate future, I think just try to hammer it home. Hammer it home as much as possible. Break them. It's time to break them. That's what I would say. Guys, let me know what you think about the tiers. Do you agree with the tiers? I think there's been a bit of a change from Matchweek 20 to 21 in my tiers. Look, I had to admit, I've shifted around some of the talent pool stuff because there have been some transfers. I've also taken into account that some player, the improvement of some players, and some like Igor Thiago for Brentford. you really kind of just have to kind of like realize he is who he is now, kind of take things into, you know, into the current situations. So yeah, that's the tiers this week. And yeah, let's have a bit of a change of music as we move into we're gonna try to keep it with the next 10 to 20 minutes. We're gonna end the live stream. Let's take a look we're gonna do Anton's picks this week. Let's see if we got some. We have not pre-planned these picks whatsoever. So let's begin. I'm going to share this tab. Let's do the picks. And guys, let me know what you guys would pick this week. What is it we doing over here? Here we go. These are the matches. Let me pull up my betting app, Sportsbet, right now. I will give you guys great betting advice for this week as we go through the 9 fixtures. The 8 big busy day in the Premier League today. 8 fixtures going on across the league. We will start out Bournemouth against Tottenham. Antoine Semenyo's goodbye to the Vitality Stadium. It is Bournemouth $2.10, Tottenham $3.30, draw $3.50. Wow. Yeah. Where is that sticky old button? Right here. Man, Bournemouth gave us a real run for our money the other day. And Tottenham is not us. And this is Semenyo's confirmed last game as a Bournemouth player. I think he goes out with a bang. I actually think maybe he'll score in this one too. We'll get you a cheeky little Semenyo goal. I would put that in my betting slip, to be honest. And I think Bournemouth are going to beat Tottenham outright. The bookies don't say that for no reason, right? Yeah, and that is what it is. Bournemouth hosting Sunderland. Belway, yeah, as I said, not Bournemouth. Brentford hosting Sunderland. Yeah, we do have a Bournemouth victory, just to recap the other one. Brentford $1.80, draw $3.50, Sunderland $4.60. I do think I see this as a win for the Bees. I think they're really looking, especially when they're playing at home, the way they performed against Everton. I think Thiago has been an absolute hit. I think Sunderland have had some pretty good results lately. I mean, get draws against Tottenham and City. I think this one is a little bit of a different one. I have to bring a bit of a different challenge. Brentford at home have just been phenomenal this year, and I do expect that they will win. Next up, Crystal Palace hosting Aston Villa. That is an interesting one. At Selhurst Park, guys. Look, Selhurst Park is tough to go. I think Villa might struggle a little bit in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if they did win, but I think I'm going to go for a draw in this game. That Crystal Palace will pick up points at home. I think, yeah, this is a tougher one for Villa. I think Crystal Palace is one of those places that a lot of people go away there, and I'm like, it's going to be a bit dicey. Everton hosting Wolves. Look, I do think Wolves had a perfect matchup being, West Ham at home. I actually went for that win. I got it. I kind of went with my gut. Here I'm going to go with my gut again. I say Everton beat Wolves. $1.83 Everton. $3.40 for the draw. $4.60 for Wolverhampton Wanderers. Fulham hosting Chelsea. Is Liam Rosinia at the wheel? I think it's too early. I think he might be in the stands. Dan Potts, baby. How are we going? But no, come on. Let's be real. Well, after what Fulham just did to Liverpool, with Potsy going, into Fulham, I know they actually have Chelsea as the favorites. This is the local derby. I think Fulham will win. So these are some of the games that Chelsea tend to draw. or Lou drop points in. In the City game, was not surprised that they came up with that effort. I think Fulham is different, and Fulham have been really, really pain in the ass to deal with at Craven Cottage. I don't get why the bookies have got Chelsea as the favorites for this. So I'm going to go against them. I think 380 for Fulham is great odds. And that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with a Fulham win. Man City against Brighton. Okay. Let's be honest. I do think that City... I mean, if they were to drop points again, I would be really, surely shocked. Now, Brighton have been a tough team for City to play. They've actually beat them earlier on in the year this year. But I do think there might be... again, the injuries at the back, though, for City do make this interesting. Ooh, it's going to be... Of course, I'm going to have my eye on this. Ooh, I'm going to back City. I'm going to back City. In this one. Yeah, I do think that. Burnley against Man United at Turf Moor. Who's at the wheel? Is it Darren Fletcher? I do believe. And I see a response from Man United. I think this is be a big emotional game for Man United. Getting behind Fletcher, with what's happened this week, he tends to have some sort of response. You see what Chelsea did, and this is Burnley. Man United should be beating Burnley with or without Ruben, or with Fletcher, or with Ole, or with Carrick, whoever. It's Burnley. There is a talent disparity here, and I expect them to take care of business. Newcastle against Leeds. Now Leeds have been on a really good run as of late. Oh, sorry. Yeah, excuse my yawning. They've been on a really good run as of late. They actually been. Well, wait, no, that's the next one. No, I actually do think, though, at St. James's Park, for real, I expect Newcastle to win. They're 166, the favorites, 380. The draw, Leeds $5. Yeah, I think the great run for Leeds ends here with a defeat at St. James's Park. And finally, last but not least, Arsenal host Liverpool in a massive game. The Tifo's coming out. I expect Arteta to go strong as he can as a lineup. I think there's going to be an energy. I think there's going to be intensity from the players. I think there should be a purpose. Do not underestimate Liverpool. They are a great team. They remember that they were our main rivals at the start of the year. Remember what happened at Anfield. I think that that everything's on the side of Arsenal. They're licking their wounds after a heartbreaking draw across town against Fulham. The momentum's on the back of Arsenal, as I said, and it's time to capitalize on that. I'm going to go with a 3-0 Arsenal victory at home against the Reds, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to the live. I got to get my ass to sleep. It's now 2:20 a.m. and I got work tomorrow, and I got to really sleep. I could have been asleep hours ago. I've kept myself awake to do this live for you guys. I put together these graphics and also and so forth. Guys, enjoy the games this week. Hopefully, it's a big win for the Gooners. I really hope. Again, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribing. Hit the QR code, subscribe to Fire Them Cannons. We'll be back again, I think, as a post-match for a reaction. Oh, check out my post-match reaction for the Liverpool game. I'm off tomorrow. I mean, games start in 4 hours. I need to fucking sleep. I'm actually not going to be awake for these games. But for the Arsenal one for sure, and we will be on the football terrace to react to that one. We're going to have a Fire Them Cannons as well. I will preview the cup games, got the FA Cup on the weekend. So guys, we're going to be able to take a break now. It's been a busy week of videos. I think it's really just kept on coming since the start of the year. I think, yeah, crazy. But we're gonna have this Liverpool game. Then we're gonna have the cup games. Hotspot doesn't really do. We don't really do stuff about the FA Cup. But you know who does? Fire Them Cannons. So go check out Fire Them Cannons, guys. I gotta go head to bed. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the football. Anton out.